Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tony McClellan Show. And today, Bank Holiday Monday. It's a beautiful Bank Holiday Monday in the UK, and I hope it's a beautiful day for you wherever you are as well across the globe. And I just want to say, every week here, speaking about social impact, justice or mobility, encouraging those social entrepreneurs and creating compassionate business leaders. And today I've got a really special guest because we're going to be talking about all things diversity, equity, inclusion and belonging. And I'm just going to bring him in. But if you are joining us, then do pop your name in the comments and I'll make sure I'll give you a shout out. And if you've got any questions for the guest, and let us know then as well. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Mr. Dan Roth. How are you doing, Dan?
Good morning, Tony. Good morning, everyone. Happy Memorial Day to, I'm going to say the servicemen and women across the world, even though it's here in the U.S. You know, I have a very strong relationship to Israel, and the Israeli Defense Forces always try to be dynamic with that. And it's currently 5:30 in the morning. So here is my large cup of coffee. This is 24 ounces.
Wow. Okay, so let's see the size of that, Dan.
This is a 30-ounce cup, but I have 24 ounces of coffee in here. Now, I'm not a monster, so this is dark roast. So there isn't quite as much caffeine, but it's a lot of hot.
And you can't help it but give us a little bit of equity with the coffee.
Yeah. Well, I have plenty of equity. I have plenty of equity in the coffee. And what's interesting, and you know, this isn't intended for any other reason than it's true. All of the coffee that I drink is sourced and produced by women-owned businesses.
Wow, and that's commendable. So let's wind it back because I still want to find out about that T-shirt that you've got on. What does it say?
It says, "Don't stop retrieving," and it's what happens when you have to wake up at 4:45 in the morning and are searching through your closet for something clean.
Bless.
You know, normally I have my Think Differently or neurodiversity shirt on, but you know, the nice thing about being a producer and understanding how these things work is I could very easily just click here and have the ADHD butterfly that signifies ADHD in women right behind me. So we could always make those changes like that.
Absolutely. So Dan, it's always fitting, whatever T-shirt you've got, and no matter how big your cup is. But you know, the thing about it is I haven't even introduced you because I just didn't know how to introduce you. So I know that you're a master in L&D, you do diversity, equity, inclusion and belonging. You're a real champion of, women's empowerment. And I know, anyone that knows me knows that I love my sustainable development goals and the one about gender equalities and reduced inequalities. And I can really see. So how would you introduce yourself? And then we're going to hear from some of the others in here who's joining us today.
So first of all, if anybody sees me looking over as a producer, I have my 32-inch monitor over here. So as you're commenting, I'll be commenting back to you. But that's the interesting thing about me. I think that a lot of people think when they grow up that when they reach a certain point that it becomes static. And for me, I'm learning something new every day. So yes, I'm a senior DEIB program manager. I've reached the highest ends of corporate. Although there's a growing push to call it humanity work, which I completely understand with all the considerations of DEIB being so-called anti-Black. I I'm a producer. I produce shows. I get paid to produce shows. Um, Currently, I'm developing 2 more DEIB series for various consultation firms. Um, I've been named one of the top recruiters in the world. I am a keynote speaker. I've done keynotes everywhere from here in the US to Nigeria, Showa Dada, to
Okay,
anybody
so
that,
we're gonna break some of this down and get
yeah,
into
there's
some of
there's a
this,
lot here.
because you can't just skirt over it, Dan. We need some extra spice with each of those pieces that
Yeah.
you've just mentioned. But what I want to do is I just want to say hi to a few people. I'm going to say that I know you as learning and development specialist,
Yeah.
women's empowerment champion, as well as DEIB specialist, enthusiast, ally. You know,
Accomplice.
how there you go, there you accomplice. That's a real good one. So let's say hi to a few people here, Dan. So we've got
Let's.
Elaine. Elaine is our disability champion. Elaine, you must hook up with Dan. I know that he's really, we speak very frequently, and he's always introducing me to people in London, around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So Elaine is a great champion of disability. So who have we got? We've got Adesh. Tell us where you are tuning in from as well. We want to know. We've got Stella, who is our diversity champion in hospitality. So Dan, anything to do with hospitality, Stella is the one. She's a trusted friend. See, I know all
I've
these.
got some connections for Stella, actually. I have 2 friends in hospitality that are
This is
really good.
so Stella, do follow Dan. So we've got a couple of people from your network. We've got Saba, who's hey enthusiast. Thank you so much, and lovely to have you join us here. And we've got Ella Glasgow from your network as well, saying that didn't even catch what you said about coffee equity. Absolutely, because it oozes out of Dan so much that when we were talking about the coffee, obviously everybody needs a different amount to get to what we need for the day. So thank you so much for joining us, and get those questions ready. So Dan, where should we start? Because I've kind of followed you for a few years now. I think I first knew of you not even on LinkedIn but on Clubhouse.
Yeah.
And at that day it just started. Clubhouse had just started. You were holding these rooms, having big talks, and I was like, who is this man? What's going on? Why is he such an ally? What's happening? So and that's when I started following you. But let's take it back from the beginning. And you've got 2 beautiful little twin girls,
Yeah.
who I know really are behind. So just tell us why you're doing what you're doing, just a little bit.
I mean, I laugh because they're definitely beautiful twin girls. They're also at an age where they are testing their father at every step of the way. My daughter, I heard her, she was being, so when you have kids, you can actually hear them being quiet, which I know sounds like an oxymoron. And I walk in and she had taken this big thing of salt and dumped it all over the ground. I said, "Why'd you do that?" She goes, "Because I was salty."
Okay. That's
But
really interesting. No, but the thing about it is, Dan, is that that kind of sounds like something you would say as well.
No, my daughter, your parents always hope that your children do to you what you did to them. And I could safely say my daughter does to me what I did to my parents.
Because I was salty. Actually, I quite like that one.
Yeah. I mean, what I do goes well beyond my kids. I mean, it goes to growing up with a mother who set the right example. I always learned best from women, especially strong women. If I'm being completely honest, I was that person that needed that that level of cultivation of a really tight environment. And growing up, like My grandmother was the matriarch of our family. I didn't know either of my grandfathers, so it was always about the women in my life.
Ah, okay. So
Um,
that's really important as well.
yeah, and I really haven't talked about that. Like my maternal grandfather died when I was around 4 or 5, and my paternal grandfather was out of the picture. He left my dad's family early on, so when my dad was young. So there was always that overarching of women are, I don't want to use the term seat at the table, but they were always in that position of
You
everything.
didn't know any different. You didn't know
Yeah,
any different.
I
Can I
really
just touch
didn't.
on something there, Dan,
Yeah.
as well? Because I think that's really important what you've just raised. I do lots of work around DEIB as well and change. And one of the things that people talk a lot about is changing behavior. And one of the things that I actually really do explain to them is that, look, some of these behaviors are learned, from when we were in environments when we were younger, and we can't just expect people to change just overnight. So this women empowerment has really been embedded within you from you were young, before
Yeah.
you were even probably speaking properly and
Yeah, I
walking
mean,
properly.
my dad was always the one that gave a lot of hugs. My mom was the disciplinarian. My mother was a 25-year teacher. Um, Actually, my mother's pretty much responsible for most of the stuff I did. When I was growing up, I used to go into her kindergarten class and read to the kids every week, and that's how I became a professional speaker, because that's how I learned to
No,
speak.
that's amazing.
Um,
Amazing.
but
So if you have any questions for Dan,
yeah,
do get them in. Do get them in the chat now, so that we can, because we're only here for a very short period of time, and we're halfway through nearly already, Dan, and we haven't even started yet.
seriously, oh
Yeah,
damn,
we haven't even started yet. So let's just think about this. So you come, you've always been around women,
yeah.
and you've got your daughters as well. So that's really, really interesting. Now, so you've talked about the fact that it's your girls that drive, what you're doing, and the women around you. So, what makes you want to kind of pursue this in this way, the way that you have? Because because that was one of the first conversations we had when you were sharing about
Yeah.
the women's empowerment series that you was doing. You had people coming collectively around a panel, talking about women's issues globally. And so, just give me a little bit of insight into what the driver was behind that.
I mean, the short version is that when my daughters were born, after they were delivered, my wife had a hemorrhage, and for 3 hours, I sat not knowing if I was going to have to raise my children on my own. Scariest moment of my life.
Sorry.
And in those moments, a lot of things occur, and you think about a lot of things. And one of the things I thought about was, are my children going to grow up in a world that's equitable for them? Can they be anything that they want to be in this world? And the resounding answer was no. From there, it occurred to me that if I don't spend every waking hour of my life doing everything that I can in order to create a better world for them, that who am I as a father? Who am I as a partner? Who am I as a husband? Um, my wife is my hero. So there's definitely that sense of, hey, I have to do this for her, because before there was Dan in the space, there was a guy with a girlfriend and now a wife that was fighting tooth and nail every day for women, for those that are disabled, for marginalized communities.
And so can I just say as well, Dan? So it sounds to me like every scenario that's been around you, that's presented, you've really explored it and looked at how you can use that in the world to make it better,
Well,
as
you
a
said a
learning
key word.
experience.
You said a key word in your opening, and you said sustainable. That I don't want that to go unnoticed, because in the US, and I want to make sure that the audience has a clear differentiation, there's a very different ideology when it comes to DIB in the US versus
Yeah.
globally. But without having in the US, the bulk majority of programs that are focused on DEIB, and you could look at it since George Floyd, if you will,
Mhm.
have been lacking that sustainability. Because now, if you look at 4 years later, everybody, including me, is getting let go from DEIB positions. Well, if you were creating sustainable systems, then that wouldn't come into play. So everything that I do, everything that you do is built on the foundation of, if I were to get fired tomorrow, is there enough material so that the next person could pick up without a hitch and be able to continue that work
And
forward?
this is really important what you're highlighting, because this is about embedding change, putting those change mechanisms in place and embedding it. And one of the things that I talk about when we're thinking about individual change is, I've got 5 pillars, and they are: consider behavior, learning, environment, network, and self-awareness. And those 5 areas will help you a real great deal in relation to sustainable change. And you just talked about the things that had an impact from when you were little right the way through. And when we're thinking about DEIB and change and applying compassion, these are the things that we do need to consider to make sure that they are embedded. But one of the things I will just throw in, because I know it's your story, but one of the things I will just throw in for good measure is this: in the UK, over 30 years ago, we had a young man called Stephen Lawrence that unfortunately passed away due to a racist attack. And the way that the police investigated it, there was an inquiry that said that the police were institutionally racist. And what's happened now is, maybe just a couple of months ago, there's a report that's come out that has reinforced that. I done some training with the police 30 years ago to embed that, to change that as part of that recommendation. And yet 30 years on, we're back in the same position that we were in, and it's embedded in that report now. So for me, being involved in this particular piece of work is about, I want to know, why are we here again? What's not happened over the 30 years? And that for me is so really important. So I totally get and I totally support everything that you're saying. But Dan, before we move on, there is a question. I don't know if you want to answer it
Yeah,
now,
so I saw that from Eileen.
if you wanted to answer it now, or because it's someone from your network, you can take that away.
Well,
And
I think we could address it really quickly,
yeah,
and
good.
it's not. I don't. The reason I like to address these questions really quickly as opposed to after is because there is this traditional philosophy of white men skirting issues until later on. I want to make sure that in everything that I do, that doesn't occur. And also, hi, Robert. So, Eileen, this is. Oh, and before I even get there, you mentioned something that needs to be addressed as well, and that is, you felt the need to validate. Well, I know it's your story, but here's the thing: in marginalized communities, there's this historic notion of having to validate everything you're saying. You're one of my best friends in the world. I knew that what you were doing, whether or not you validated it, was adding to the story. You didn't need to validate that, but you chose to do it because it's ingrained in your nature when you're having these shows, when you're living life. And I want to call that out. And it's a goal of mine to call that out, because there was nothing you needed to validate.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't looking at it in a validation way, but thanks for highlighting your perspective of that, Dan. I was more looking at it from a perspective of, because it brought me back to that space now, asking that question: why are we here? And I realized I was going to get down into it, but I had to haul myself
But it's
back.
such a critical reflection. It was great. And it's something that we could take and expand on. But
Yeah, definitely.
to
Another
go to
time.
Eileen's, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's fine. Thank you for highlighting that, Dan. I was just saying that that's all I was doing there, just kind of really putting myself in a different space of reflection, because if we don't embed these things,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Well, it's all about setting the tone. So sometimes in talking about validation, people intend to validate and sometimes people don't. But if we don't call it out, even in those times that we don't, then it gets let go, and you don't know if that's a situation where that person did feel like they had to validate. So even if it's not 100% on point, bringing up that conversation allows for a more consistent flow going forward.
Absolutely. And part of that as well, if I'm just going to say this before we move on, is really about, because there's a lot of questioning around the quality of the training there. Was it the training that needed to be delivered in a different way? Was it, what was it there? Or was the training good enough, but the systems weren't embedded? Something has clearly gone very, very wrong there. So that's really where it's at in my mind. I really want to get to the bottom of that. But anyway, do you want to pick up on Eileen's question and then we can move on?
It's a tricky question because, and I don't want to say, it's hard to group microaggressions because fundamentally this is just not an easy topic to solve, because ultimately a lot of it comes down to two things. One is how people are learning about DIB, which goes into the learning and development piece, additional trainings. Are we softening these conversations to the point that those that are making these microaggressions don't really think it's a serious thing? And then the second thing, and this is what I talk about a lot in my keynotes, is this ally versus accomplice mentality. So in a situation where you're in a meeting in general, it doesn't have to be Teams meeting, and you're dealing with microaggressions from your manager, there's two things that should be able to happen. One is you should be able to address it right then and there and say, hey, I don't feel respected by this, and then take it, or you could take it offline. And then the second thing is that there needs to be a better job of those others in the room of also agreeing and saying, hey, this is not okay. We need to make adjustments. Now, a lot of the times, and I'm not going to say in its totality, people that are making these microaggressions don't always realize that they're making it. There's a lot of things like in the LGBTQIA community, misgendering someone is considered a microaggression, but it may not be a malicious microaggression because that person may just not have the knowledge. Then there's other things like the aggressiveness versus assertiveness conversation, talking down, gaslighting. These are more, I don't want to say reprehensible, but these are things that are conscious behaviors that need to be corrected in the moment for them to fully understand. And then once you correct them in the moment, then you delve into further conversations. But I can't end this portion without saying that there needs to be a protection for those employees from retaliation if you are going to have, because a lot of times the reason people don't is because of the fact that they're worried that it's going to prohibit them from rising up the ladder. They're going to be looked at differently. There's going to be all these possible repercussions, but in a fair society, if we're all really trying to grow, then we shouldn't have to worry about repercussions for standing up and being.
Well, that's right, because there's in the UK, there's a whistleblowing policy that people are saying, come on, challenge it, talk up, and all of these things. But ultimately, what happens when you do, you're managed out, or, so it's about, people need to feel confident that that's not going to happen. Yeah.
And there's no ability for them to feel confident that it's not going to happen, not in the current society that we live in. It's why, like, when we talk about ally versus accomplice, when you talk about accomplice, an accomplice puts themselves at risk for those repercussions because they want to be an active participant in change. When I went to my former employer, I wasn't going in from an ally supportive perspective, and I don't want to degrade the term ally. I was going in from the perspective of I am mission over sacrifice driven. So if there's something happening, if a Black female colleague is feeling misrepresented, underrepresented, if she's dealing with microaggressions, I'm going to step up, step out, and make sure that doesn't happen. And I've done.
There's a conversation that needs to be had there at the time, as well as afterwards as well. So and that's both parties, and there also needs to be because some of it is about passive aggressive as well, and some of it needs to be resting on the fact that we want people to be speaking up regardless of whether this person's present or not. If it's directed at a particular person, that whether they're there or not, you're still going to be speaking up. And
yeah,
that's really important. And allies are important too. But one of the things I want to highlight is it's about how people feel, not necessarily how it was said. That's important, but the most important piece is how it makes a person feel.
yeah.
You know, even if there's no bad intent, if it made a person feel a particular way, then it needs to be addressed.
It does. You know, we can't sit here masking our feelings and pretend things don't hurt, because they do. And, you know, you and I are huge proponents of mental health conversations, and being able to express, and being able to live in a society that allows us to express without feeling like we are being shamed for it is so immensely critical.
Absolutely.
And this, like, you know, we're in a short show, so we can't really go down this line, but like, when you could take this and you could bridge it into the glass ceiling and the sticky floor that women have when they go on, or sorry, that pregnant individuals have when they go on maternity leave, and how they come back to lesser positions, or if they have to take a break now, well, where am I starting back up afterwards? When we look at the pandemic, there were a lot of pregnant individuals that had taken breaks that were coming back, and, you know, where do I fit in at this
Yeah, no,
point?
it's good. And this
Yeah.
is a massive piece, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we're already starting to go down rabbit holes, but
Well,
I hope that
I'm going to
helps a
say
little bit,
one last
Eileen.
thing. One last thing, Tony, because I feel I don't see enough men saying this. More men need to get behind maternity and menstrual rights. And I did just say menstrual on the air. So just let that be a shock to the system. These are all things that need to be incorporated, and we can't skirt around it, because traditionally men have felt like menstrual conversations are icky. Well, no, my wife has a period. I love my wife. Hence, we need to have these conversations.
Just like, you know, if it's somebody a little bit older, maybe, you know, that may be going through the menopause,
Yeah.
and how that can affect people, the impact on that. So, you know, that's really one of the things that we need to be thinking about as well. So ultimately, that is so important. See, you can't help but wander into this women's empowerment, Dan. You don't even need to be prompted, but you know, time's running down, and I really want to get to some of these things and highlight some of the things that you've done in your work. So, like I said, I've met you on Clubhouse, and I've seen you not only on Clubhouse talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, but you've really had some people in rooms where you're on stage and addressing the amendments they can have on their CVs. You know, you're really putting it out and helping them and giving them advice, speaking to them on a one-to-one. You know, I've seen you do nothing but share learning and development knowledge around LinkedIn as well as other platforms. I have, you know, I know that at one point you invited me to your group, which I'm a member of. You were a founding member of the LinkedIn group, the Collective, and Equity and Inclusion-Based Resource Community.
I'm the creator of.
The creator of.
Sorry about that. I have to take credit for that one.
Yeah, no, I said you. Oh, okay. But I worded it wrong. I put founding member, but actually you were the creator and founder, you know, of that. So, and when I last looked, it was over 12,000 people in there, and at its busiest, you were putting job adverts in there, doing clinics, all sorts of things. And well, I don't even know how you've done these things. So I know that tell us a little bit about the speaking stuff that you're doing now.
So
Where are you speaking? What are you speaking on? What are the things, the topics that people can ask you to speak about?
so it's really interesting, and thank you for bringing that up. And yeah, I'm trying to. It's hard to keep up with as much as I'd like to do with that group and everything else, because you know as well as anyone, my hand is in so many jars. And now I've really been trying to take better care of my physical and mental health. This is the lightest I've been in probably 6 months. Um, But yeah, so the keynote that I've been most asked about, and I do 4 different keynotes, it is called The Inclusion Revolution: A Path to Progress. Now, I'll tell you straight up, the last time I did this, I was nervous as could be. It was for a conference here in San Diego with a lot of people from LinkedIn. And basically, what it talks about is I start off all my conversations with, what are you prepared to lose? Because as an accomplice, as somebody that's trying to create change, especially as a white individual, you're going to lose something. This work is not without loss, but it's also with the understanding that the more people that look like me lose, the more our collective society wins. And the way that I demonstrate this is by talking about the difference between an ally and an accomplice. But then I share 3 very personal stories, one of which I already touched on, which was almost losing my wife. But I talk about 3 stories of exclusion, and then what could be done and how you could be an active accomplice within those time periods, and how you could really invigorate society and become an agent for change. Hey, Aaron Gibson, Tony, if you don't know Aaron, amazing guy, and this is my ADHD taking over.
That's good.
So the entire idea, and the reason I'm telling my stories is, 1, I'm a storyteller, but 2, not everybody's going to be in the same place when we talk about these conversations. So if I can make an emotional connection to somebody with one of my stories, because like with my wife's situation, you don't have to have a wife, but you may have a loved one that went through something similar. And all of these situations lead back to this emotion. And then you could decide where you want to be. Do you want to be an ally? Do you want to be an accomplice? Where are you at? Do you want to do more research? I provide everybody with a ton of resources, including one that I'll talk about in a minute because it's important to me. And what was really cool is I wound up getting this standing ovation in front of this huge group. And, I have to point out that there was a woman in the audience by the name of Dr. Carol Parker Walsh, who I have so much love and respect for, who's here on LinkedIn. And it was one of those situations where getting her approval was like,
Okay, no, so that's great.
yeah.
That's great.
But the thing that I want to point out, and I do 3 other keynotes, one talks about ADHD, one talks about my journey and accepting my weaknesses as strengths. And then the other one talks about the journey of a white anti-racist.
But the thing about it is, Dan, is that holistically, what they're doing is they're helping people to understand their own self-awareness of where they are at themselves or where they want to be, and I think that's so key. So before you continue, let's just say hi to Robert. We had Elaine's question here. Adama, hi, thank you so much for joining. We've got Aaron Gibson, thank you, from Calgary. Lovely to have you here. Stella is saying that she started listening to your podcast.
Which one?
We've also got Elaine, who is, saying this is really interesting. So why did you laugh, Dan? Actually, do you know what? It's really great having you on this side of the studio rather than in the audience, because you do nothing but make trouble when you're in the audience.
Well,
yes. So now
my release. Like, that's the thing I try to get people to understand. Because if people just look at me in the comment section, they're like, who is this idiot? But that's because I talk about so much serious stuff that when I'm in the audience, I'm just playing around and I'll say things to try to catch you off guard.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm there with you now. So having you here in this hot seat means that I've got semi-good behavior.
Yeah. Well, no, you absolutely. Well, it's because I love and respect you. Here's the one thing that I want to put out there. There's very few jobs right now in DEIB. It's one of the reasons I'm struggling so much. But because of that, I think it's more important than ever for us to collectively come together as a community and say we're not okay with this. One of the ways that I decided to really give back, but also because I don't want there to be any false illusions about my personal narrative. As somebody that's a white male in this space, I understand that there may be false illusions about why I'm present. I wanted my knowledge to be on full display. So I started putting out a 6-part series. And that 6-part series is my corporate DEI playbook, because I literally went into corporate and built sustainable resources at the top levels that now are being used. And I got to the point where I had the top 4 people in the entire company of 100,000 person company know my name, send me connection requests. So I'm putting out this corporate DEI playbook to show exactly what I did, how I did it, so that others could either pull something from it, take my cue, and then be able to implement it. Because with so few people left in the DEIB space, if I could share something that worked for me if they're having trouble, then to me, that's worth it.
I think that that's
Yeah,
absolutely commendable, Dan, to be
yeah,
honest with you, that you're giving all this information out. It's almost like a little toolkit of, me myself, I can't talk because I put so much out there because my heart is, I really want to give. However, I want to also acknowledge as well the work that you've done around the recruitment space, in the recruitment space, and you've used that in terms of helping people again on LinkedIn, and really, so I know that you were working recently with Amazon, and there were some layoffs, some redundancies, which is really what you're alluding to as well. That so many people are, in terms of the DEIB space and inclusion, are losing their roles really, and we need
yeah.
to embed this within the workplace. We need to make sure that it stays there. We need to make sure that it's sustainable, which is what you were kind of alluding to earlier on. So now you're moving into the space of public speaking and consulting. Is that right? If the right job comes along for you, you're gonna
So I'm actively looking for the right job.
yeah.
So you go back to my goals. My goal was always to have the professional speaking and the consulting here and then work consistently, because I believe I need to be a disruptor at high levels of corporate so that we could then mimic that system to other companies and then start a waterfall effect. And the goal is to make enough money so that my wife, who supported me when she shouldn't have, can take a year or two off, figure out what she wants to do. So between my professional speaking, between my consultancy, again, I just proposed 2 separate shows that I'm going to be working on for DEI consulting firms.
So the thing about it is, Dan, is that you've done all of this to the community. You've given
Yeah,
so much. You've poured and poured and poured, and you're still pouring now. And I'm just really highlighting the fact that you are still pouring, but really you need to be compensated
I
for
do.
some of your pouring as well. And I think part of the reason why I really kind of recognize some of the work that you've done is because you've done so much for people. And I just want to say, now it's your turn. Now it's your turn. Let's see what we can do to help you in your situation. If there are any opportunities out there, whether it's the right one or not, let's just share them with Dan and see, he can decide if it's the right one for him or not. If you feel that he can be helpful in any way, or if you need some advice, then this is a great person to connect with. I mean, he's in the US, I'm in the UK, but we still speak on a frequent basis and compare notes around the differences of what's going on in our 2 different worlds. But
And I have to thank you, Tony, because there's a lot of people that say that they want to help, and a lot of people that are well-intentioned about helping. And I'm going to try not to get emotional as I say this. There's very few people that you walk into a relationship with in life that say what they mean what they say, and show up. You have showed up. And I can't tell you from the bottom of my heart how much that means to me.
Oh, thank you.
You are the real deal. And I can promise you, if next time I get to London, without fail, I will chain myself to a car to come see you.
Good.
No ifs, ands, or buts. But last thing I
Can I just say,
mentioned,
put that out to the
please.
universe there? Everyone's heard that one, Dan, so you're going to have to do it.
Oh, I follow through. I don't believe in not following through. But you mentioned the recruiting. The last thing I want to say is today or tomorrow, part 3 of my playbook is coming out. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm literally breaking down diversity sourcing and how to accomplish it. And let me tell you, Tony, it is the dumbest newsletter I've ever put out. And the reason I say it's the dumbest newsletter I've ever put out is because there is no excuse when you read this newsletter why anyone shouldn't be doing it. It's literally a push of a
Well,
button.
that's what I say. Be good at the basics. Let's be good at the basics. And this is the thing about it. And I talk an awful lot about compassion as well as DEIB. And it's about taking action. Let's take action. It's not just about challenging, recognizing, identifying. It's about what we're going to do once we've done those things. Let's take some action. And if we don't know what to do, this is where you seek some help. So let's just bring in a moment. Stella's saying, I remember that you're a disruptor, but shouldn't we all be sometimes? Yes, we should be. But the trouble is with this, and maybe Dan might have a different response. The trouble is with this, Stella, is that some people don't recognize the positive of being a disruptor. They think that it's a negative thing. There's a negative connotation to it. So, Dan, what are your thoughts around that? But
I'm with you. I mean, when have you known me not to intentionally disrupt something, whether it's somebody's show or anything else? I've had to adapt, though, because there's a certain level of meeting people where they are. And while I don't dumb down DEIB, and while I don't believe in oversimplifying it, because that's not the way I was trained, I do believe that there's a learning process and a learning curve so that people are ready to be a disruptor, because I would never put somebody in the situation where I would say be a disruptor, then they do something, but then and not know how to react.
That's right. That's exactly it. And then, the wrong action comes out of it because of the way people have misinterpreted that. So yes, Stella,
that's my problem with a lot of allies.
I kind of, rather than a disruptor, I kind of, relay it to a mover and shaker, a changer, an enabler, so that's how I kind of see it, moving the space forward, as Elaine is just chipping in. I'm happy to be a disruptor. It's about moving the DIB space forward. Absolutely. But this is what I'm trying to say, that, it's about the connotations around the word, that you're being disruptive, you're going to make trouble. This is the thing about it, Elaine, and that's all I was saying.
Well, in fairness, if things weren't messed up to begin with, if society, especially in the US, wasn't created to be oppressive, then there wouldn't be a need for us to disrupt. So if you really look at it logically, being a disruptor is really just being somebody that sees what's going on and understands it's not the way it should be. And
but absolutely, but it's about us educating people about what being a disruptor actually means.
Yes.
I was speaking to somebody recently, Dan, who calls themselves a disruptor as well. And there's nothing wrong with that word. But, they've got to a point that they're just continuously fighting and disrupting and fighting. And I said, but you're even fighting even when there's nothing to fight. Because if somebody comes to you and says, okay, I win, you win, here's the white flag, you're still fighting, and so for me, it's about having that understanding of disrupting and making sure that you're not missing the opportunity to make a change by continually disrupting. You've got to see when the opportunity presents. And that's the piece that I'm trying to really get in there, Dan.
Oh, yeah.
Over to you.
And we won't even start.
Am I getting you?
I'm going to say something controversial, and I don't care because it's accurate.
Oh, here we go. The coffee's kicked in.
What really drives me nuts, and I see too often, is white women wanting to be allies will speak up in conversations with Black women, thinking they're doing something good, and they get it ass backwards, then they get butthurt when they're called out on it. This is the reason I have issues with allies, because a lot of times allies don't always know and haven't always done the research, and then they
But the
expect.
thing about it is as well, Dan, is that we're always going to be learning.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're having these conversations, it can be between two best friends. You still need to understand that there could be disagreement. You might come out battered and bruised, but the fact is you're still friends at the end of it. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to say, okay, I've challenged my views. I understand your perspective. You're right. I'm challenging my views, and maybe I need to look deeper into that and recover from it. But actually, when people challenge and say, well, I feel hurt by the reaction, they recoil. And the thing about it is it's about bouncing back, being resilient, and saying, I've learned from that. I challenge, I was wrong, I was right. I should have maybe had more consideration about doing it this way. And that is one of the reasons why I do respect you as an individual, Dan. And I've said this to you in person, but I'm going to say it publicly as well. It's because you consistently challenge your own views. When you see something new comes, you challenge that, you encourage people to learn, and engage in a body of learning, read books. You do that yourself, and you're educating yourself, and you don't leave that to others to educate you. And I think that is just such a healthy way, a healthy mindset to have, which is a real growth mindset. And I think that that is the mindset that some of the leaders have to have in terms of, I want to learn here, and really not be afraid of going back out there if your fingers are burnt a little bit.
Yeah, you're 100% right, and that education piece is the part that really bothers me, because a lot of people of privilege want things handed to them. They want to be able to ask instead of, and look, the way that I wound up in the position I was in is because I did those negative things. I started conversations thinking I was doing the right thing, and then I got called out on it. And I was happy I got called out on it, because then I did the research and I understood. And the next time I had a conversation with that person, that mentor, who's now one of my best friends in the world, and I produce a show for her, is now I went back and I said, okay, well, now I have all this information. Now can we talk about it? And when you do the research first and then you ask the questions, a lot more people are apt to be responsive. Now, I know that there's certain people in the community that are like, okay, well, I'm going to teach. I'm okay with them asking questions first. To me, that just promotes bad behavior, because that's supporting the idea.
Almost lazy. It's almost lazy behavior, isn't
Yeah, I
it?
didn't want to say that, but it's lazy.
Yeah, you can be curious and things like that. But I think, don't put it on people it's not people's job to educate you. It's your job to, and that's the piece about it. So we always have to naturally be curious. And Deloitte, have the 6 C's of inclusive leadership. And one of those pieces is about curiosity and being committed to follow through as well on that. So commitment is real key.
Yeah.
So let's
the
just
best
bring
way
in.
to do this, real quick. The best way to do this is start young. My children, who are 3.5 years old, have a book called Please Don't Touch My Hair. And it talks about black hair, because there's this thought where everybody wants to touch. No, you don't have the right to touch anybody's hair. We need to start from foundationally when kids are young. That way they have that.
That's really important. Thank you so much. So let's see. So we've got Aaron, who says Dan keeps you on your toes and a welcome soul any day. Absolutely, we'll keep you on your toes. And once you get used to Dan, you kind of look out for him. Where is he? Where is he?
Yeah,
But it's great. Keep fighting, keep supporting. Stella saying, we heard you. I'm in London and we'll come with you. Not sure what that was in. Oh, when you're coming to London, about chaining to the car. Okay. So happy to be a disruptor. It's about moving the DEIB space forward. Absolutely, Elaine. Keep championing the disability piece of it. Thank you so kindly. Off to work. Big burly hugs, Dan Roth. Thank you so much, Aaron. He's got that first hand. So we need to kind of bring this to a close now, Dan. There's so much that we can always talk about with DEIB, and each area is such a massive area, and maybe we will come back and have those conversations. But for now, I just want to highlight you as a woman's empowerment speaker, someone that can speak on L&D and recruitment as well as DEIB. But really what you've highlighted here is that you are an ally and accomplice, you know? So I love that word, the description there of accomplice. And I think it's very fitting for you as well, Dan, as an accomplice, you know? Yeah. So, yeah. So if people want to that's where you're developing that. You're still looking at roles that come your way.
Yeah. So my job search is, it's hard to say. Yeah. My job search is my first priority. Like I mentioned, it's really hard in the DIB space. And even those that are senior executives are saying, hey, Dan, we'd love to have you. There's just not a lot of spaces right now. But anything in the L&D space,
the thing about it is that and maybe this goes out to recruiters, that even if there isn't anything permanent in a permanent space for you, just to be able to say, well, hey, if you've got a short project, happy to come in on a short project and do a few days, you know, and help you along. And because that was one of the things that I used to do a long time ago when I came out of employment. That was my way back in, because I knew where those gaps are. So even if it's just a short project, or you need a hand or some help putting a piece of work together, then I'm sure Dan's available to just kind of support you for a few hours or whatever. And you know, don't ask to keep picking his brain or picking anybody's brain. You know, at least offer to buy the man a coffee or 5. Or 5.
I have to be. I gave away so much for free for a long time, and I think that was the right thing to do at that point. I'm at a point now where I have to set the right tone. And, you know, I would never want my daughters to do free work. So I have to set that example of saying, hey.
Well, it's good quality, isn't it? It's quality. Yeah. And that's maybe one of the things that, you know, if you've got a buy me a coffee link, then share your buy me a coffee and get people to buy you a coffee, Dan, and or 5, like I said. And that would be a real great starting point. So on that note, how would you like to close off this piece, Dan?
Oh shoot.
What I will say is, you're on YouTube, you're on Instagram, you're on LinkedIn. You've also got your website, danrothconsulting.com. Stella has highlighted the fact that you've got your podcasts, and you've highlighted that you're putting lots out as well. So
yeah, multiple podcasts. So I alluded to it before, but my mentor, her name is Future Kane, and we've been working on a show for coming up on a year now called Healing Our Future. You won't see me on very often, but I produce everything, and the goal is to have these conversations.
Stella's saying share the link for the coffee, and someone else is saying thank you so much for the discussion.
So Tony was talking about the coffee link. I don't even know it.
I'm gonna tell you what the coffee link is as soon as we come off here.
Yeah, because I have no idea what that.
Stella knows what the coffee link, because I recently shared it with her recently too.
Yeah, so, I mean, I have Venmo, I have PayPal, I have all these different things, but I don't believe in getting anything for free.
No, that's fine. And I think that what happens is that when you are a giving person, people always expect that. But listen, I think we kind of get the gist of where you're going with this, Dan. L&D, DEIB, you're a real champion. You've got it in your heart. You want to give, you know, but you've also got a family to support. And that's one of the things I say about social entrepreneurs, is that you don't have to do it for free. Passion doesn't mean for free. You know, let's you've done so much for the community, and now it's your turn. So on that note, I just want to say, reach out to Dan, follow him. You'll get so much value in the work that he's doing. He's got this massive community as well, and gives away so much general advice. And if you want general advice, then that's the place to find it. If you want specialist advice, reach out, message him directly, and I'm sure he'll be happy to help in exchange for 5 or 10 coffees. So on that note, I just want to say thank you so much, Dan Roth, for joining me here. I'm going to have you back very, very soon. I know that you got up really early, set 2 alarm clocks and everything.
No, I woke up on my own. My internally it said it's Tony o'clock, and so I woke up. But it's all good for you. I'd do pretty much anything.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming here and sharing. And I just want to say thank you to Elaine, Adesh, Stella, Saba, Ella. We've got, is it Elaine?
Yeah,
Robert,
that's Elaine.
Adama,
That's Elaine. That's LinkedIn user.
Aaron. Who else have we got? Yeah, thank you so much for your comments, and anyone else that's joined us online. Really appreciate you, and see you right here next week. Dan, keep doing the great work that you do.
And have a good rest of your bank holiday. And to those in the US, have a great Memorial Day. Stay safe. Please don't drink and drive.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. All right. Bye for now.
Thank you for spending time with me and my guest today on Critical Reflections with Your Critical Friend. Today, you got just a very, very small sprinkling of Tony's fairy dust. But if you'd like more, then do reach out. For speaking or hosting, it's TonyMcClelland.com. For social impact, social justice, or social mobility, check out our work at FirstLifeGroup.com. I look forward to hearing from you. In the meantime, feel encouraged, be inspired, be empowered, and make a difference. Bye for now.